Hi everyone, I'm Varun, and today I'll be doing a deep dive into the custom timekeeping tools on Tabletop Mirror. I'll talk about the calendar system and how it ties into your custom lore timelines and events. We'll start by looking at a calendar from my world that resembles the real world calendar. At the top of the page, it lists all the units of time that my calendar uses, and how long each of them is. After that, we see that we have set up a custom date and time format, enabling us to write dates in this format and have the system understand what we're talking about. We can also convert to and from other calendar systems in their custom formats. For example, in these calendar systems, the first day of the 10th month in the year 202 correlates to the start of the campaign's calendar, and when we add a month, it means 30 days has passed in the campaign. Adding a day, of course, also means a day has passed in the campaign. We can even add other calendars to convert between multiple different systems at once. Now let's try setting up our own calendar systems. We start by clicking Create and naming our new calendar. Our calendar starts out pretty empty, so we should start by creating some basic time units using real units. As you can see, I'm making a unit based off each of the previous units. This makes it easier to understand how the units connect to each other, but you don't have to do it this way. The exception is the seconds unit, which is based off something called the absolute unit. This basically provides a standard comparison unit so we can convert between calendars. Now that that's out of the way, we can also create a custom date format. Note that we use the abbreviations for our units as placeholders in the format. That's all for the basic calendar setup, but let's make things a little nicer. Going back into edit mode, I'll add 7 labels for the days of the week. We're also going to make months alternate between 30 and 31 days. Finally, we're going to say years start at 0 instead of 1. Now the calendar has a new starting date. Notice how it also indicates the origin date is a Monday. Now we'll create a second calendar to relate with the first calendar. But first, let's revise our date format just a little bit to make it all about the day. Let's branch our calendar now. It's kind of like copying, but it changes the calendar's origin. We'll come back to what that means later. Our second calendar is going to be a little bit more complex than our first calendar. Let's start by specifying the maximum value for each unit. For example, we don't want minutes to go past 59 because 60 minutes is just an hour. We'll also use our full date format here. Remember how we branched this calendar? What that means is that this calendar is relative to our first calendar. This can be used to specify identical calendars that are only different in the number of years they have. We can also define if time passes faster in one calendar over the other. Now we can test out the conversions between our calendars. If we add a year, we add 366 days to the other calendar, because the first day of the new year is also a day. Now let's use our calendars for something useful. Going over to the timelines page, let's create a timeline based on one of our calendars. Our timeline's empty, but we can fix that by creating an event. We'll make it start on the 3rd day. Notice how when we click Create, it appears on our timeline. We can even create events before the origin, for example the last month before the year 0. When we add it to our timeline, it expands the timeline to match. Timelines can even be made of other timelines. To show you, let's make another timeline with our other calendar system. I could add a pre-existing event, but instead, I'll just make a new one. Now that we have an event on day 2, let's see what happens when I add my first timeline as a sub-timeline. That puts all of our events in one timeline. Notice how, because this timeline uses our first calendar system, all of the dates are in that format. At any point, we can also browse all of the events we created from the events page. We don't have to find the event on the timeline to edit it. And when we do edit it, it'll update on every timeline. That's all for timekeeping in Tabletop Mirror. In the future, we'll cover how this can be connected with your campaigns to make the experience more immersive. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing or joining us on our subreddit so you can stay up to date and take part in our open beta. Thanks for watching, see you next time.